So last week, Bulgari invited me to London to see their novelties released at Watches and Wonders 2024, and to get hands-on with the new thinnest watch in the world, which was even cooler than I thought it was going to be. There's so much to talk about, so let's just jump into it. Let's first talk about the star of the show, the Bulgari Octo Finissimo Ultra COSC. I had looked at so many pictures of this one, but actually handling it, it's so weird. So this is the new thinnest watch in the world with a 1.7mm total thickness, breaking Richard Mille's previous record, the RMUP01 Ferrari, by just 0.05mm. And if I may, the Bulgari is significantly better looking. Bulgari is a brand that I associate with thin watches. The Octo Finissimo, just on its own, just the bog standard Octo, is a very thin watch. And they always like to hold the title of the thinnest watch. Holding and handling this was a very weird experience. Even though it looks ultra thin and delicate, it doesn't feel delicate. To save room, they built the movement of the watch into the case. This watch doesn't have a crown in the traditional sense, but it is built into the case. On the underside of the case, it has these little teeth, and you can manually wind it and set the time from there. I really dig it, but I thought it sounded like a nightmare for setting the time and keeping your watch wound. But Bulgari thought of this. One thing I haven't seen anyone talk about yet is the box. This watch box was a real takeaway for me. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. The winding part made sense to me. There must be a mechanism in there that manually winds the crown. But how does it set the time? How does it know the time? This is where it starts getting really clever. There's a digital clock on the left-hand side where you can set the time. And then when you close the box, the light will be yellow. This means that it's setting the time. Once the light goes green, the time should be set and ready to go. This is just one of those things that I can't afford in my wildest dreams, but it's still so cool to see. That's kind of how I felt about this whole event in general. It was like going to a car show. Can I afford anything that's here? Absolutely not. But am I happy to be here and see all these beautiful, wonderful things? Yes. So this new ultra thin COSC is priced at $650,000. So forget about it. But as a watch enthusiast, it's impossible not to get excited to see amazing machines like this. One interesting thing I've noticed about this hobby is that there's a lot of people who only show interest in the watches that they can afford, which is something I don't really relate to. I love seeing watches in my price point, but I also love seeing haute horology and just insane timepieces. There's this moment from my childhood that's always really stuck with me and I've held on to. I don't know why, but when I was a kid, like a good Canadian kid, I was watching the Stanley Cup playoffs, hockey, and there was this player whose team got knocked out in the first round. But they made a point of televising that this player still went to every game or watched every game of the Stanley Cup playoffs, even though his team wasn't in it anymore. And I remember my dad said to me, "See, Britt, that's someone who truly loves hockey. That's someone who truly loves the sport and loves the game." And I don't know why that moment stuck with me, but I feel like it's incredibly relevant to horology. It's not only about what watches are in your price point. I love watches that are so pie in the sky I couldn't afford them in my wildest dreams, but I love that they exist and I live at a time where they exist. One other thing that surprised me is that the word COSC is in this watch's name. Something I didn't know, Bulgari do not get their watches COSC certified, but rather test their watches to COSC specifications. I was pretty surprised by this. You'd think at the price point of a lot of their watches that COSC certification would come with the territory, but it doesn't. For COSC certification, usually a watch brand just sends off the movement, they test it, happy days. But Bulgari actually ran into some trouble with this with the ultra thin COSC, because COSC was asking for the movement, but because the movement is quite literally built into the watch case, they had to send off the entire watch, which is quite irregular. Coming back down to earth, let's talk about the more regular Octo Finissimos. Coming back down to earth, they're still very expensive, but I feel like the Octo is a watch that I really like, but I don't know very much about it. It's not as much in my wheelhouse, so I always extra appreciate events like this where I can learn more. The first watch that caught my eye was the Octo Finissimo Sketch. I feel like this is a watch you'll either love or hate. I feel like watch geeks always say, "Why don't brands do anything different? They always do the same thing." And then a brand does something different and we're like, "Ew, I hate it. I hate it so much." And then we'll all go gaga over a black and white Tudor Black Bay. I personally love these. They have a cartoony kind of charm to them. First introduced in 2012, the sketch is a long-standing tradition of Bulgari. Well, long-ish, I guess it's only been 12 years. But the big difference with these is that the dial depicts the rough sketch of the movement, and the movement being automatic rather than manual winding. I do see these as being more of a collector's item though. I don't think this is for the person who wants a single Octo Finissimo. I like them, but I know lots of people won't. Price-wise, they're not cheap. Bulgari will produce 280 units of the time only in steel at 17,800 euros. The rose gold retails for 51,000 euros, and the chronograph costs 20,800 euros. But if you think those are punchy, strap in for this one. This is one of the watches I can't stop thinking about, the Octo Finissimo Tourbillon skeleton. This is so sporty looking with the fabric strap and the DLC coated titanium, 40mm case size, and a hand wound movement. But the thing I couldn't wrap my head around was the thickness. This is a 4.85mm tourbillon. Once again, I just can't wrap my brain around it. It's one of those things where you know it's cool, the complication is cool, but then it's in hand. It feels like a magic trick. But the price on these is pretty freaking punchy. So the DLC coated titanium are listed for 145,000 euros. Oof. I thought these were going to be like between 60 and 80,000. I must be way off the mark. But those were the real standout models for me. But I do need to say as well, there were some incredible Serpentis that deserve attention. I am currently trying to de-influence myself from the watch world. I feel like a lot of the opinions and tastes that I have been largely informed by watch media. And I think my opinion on the Serpenti is one of those things I never really gave a fair go. I never really gave it a shot. I just assumed it was dumb because it wasn't a stainless steel dive watch that looks the same as everything else. You know? So when I went to this press event, I really didn't know what to expect. I've never been to a Bulgari press event before, but I would say 90% of the room was fashion influencers and 10% was watch journalists. It was very easy to instantly discern this because there wasn't a stupid amount of men in the room wearing military jackets and Rolex Explorers.
Spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before.
Or men in tweed jackets telling me about neo-vintage icons. Instead, the room was full of the best looking people I have ever seen in my life. It was 30% men, 70% women, also very uncommon. And I won't harp on too long about this, but I can't stop thinking about it and I need to share it. I just have never been in a room with so many good-looking people. They weren't like your average, oh, like she's really pretty. Oh, that's a pretty girl. That's a good-looking guy. No, these were supermodels. These were like perfect specimens of humans. They were breathtaking. They had no blemishes. Their hair was perfect. Their skin they had no pores. I did not know how to interact with these people. You see really great looking people on TV or on your phone screen or something, but then you see them in person. I did not know what to say to these beautiful people. This isn't the point. What I'm trying to say is that it was interesting because there wasn't a lot of the regular watch people there, and it was getting to watch non-watch gremlins interact with watches and see which one spoke to them. Every single woman in that room flocked to the Serpentis and they were in love. I couldn't get a shot of all the Serpentis together because there was no point where all of them were together and where the girls weren't wearing them. Even some of the guys were getting involved. The women did not care about the Octo Finissimos at all. The men kinda cared, but I'm not sure they always knew what they were looking at. One of the very good-looking people started talking to me about the DLC-coated Tourbillon. He asked if I thought it was too sporty for his outfit. I said no. And he said, it's a very cool-looking watch. I replied, it's an insanely cool watch. And he asked if I knew what all the dial work is. So I began to boringly explain what he's looking at on the skeletonized dial, but the real cool, exciting part was having such a thin tourbillon. I could see I was losing my audience, so I shut up and confirmed This is gonna look dope with your outfit though. But it was so interesting being with not watch people and just observing what spoke to them, seeing watches through their eyes. It was really, really refreshing, and sometimes I think we need to do more things that are outside of our comfort zone. Maybe that's trying a new skill you've always wanted to learn, or maybe dusting off the cobwebs on something you've learned before. Either way, today's fabulous video sponsor, Brilliant, can help with that. Brilliant is the STEM learning platform that makes learning fun and interactive. They have thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI, where you learn by doing. It isn't sitting through boring lectures, it's hands-on. So I've been doing the how LLMs work, or large language models, because I really need to wrap my head around AI. Usually I'm a slow, late adapter, but I thought with this one, no, not this time. I'm gonna get it right away. So I've been working through an AI course, but they have courses in probability, exploring data, thinking in code, and so many more. Another important thing is that you learn at your own speed and you learn in your own time. Learning a little every day is so important for your personal and professional growth, and it only needs to be a few minutes every day. For me, I don't have a lot of spare time, so I opted in for 15 minutes a day, which is a far better use of my time than my usual doom scrolling. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/BritPierce or click the link in my description. And you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription if you use my link. I love Brilliant. I use them every day. I love working with them. So go check them out. Anyways, guys, I'd love to hear all your thoughts on Bulgari watches. Pop it in the comments down below. Do all the algorithm stuff. And now let's thank the fabulous, gorgeous, wonderful Pope tier patrons. Oh yes, people wanted the Patreon song back, so I won't be talking, I'll just be singing. Thank you, Pope tier patrons. I thank you to the all tier patrons. Thank you to the all tier patrons, but a big special thank you to the Pope tier patrons. Thank you, patrons.